Hi everyone, and welcome to the first tutorial of this course, Psych 201W. So I hope you all are doing well and staying safe and healthy, and happy start to the summer semester. I hope you're able to balance coursework with rest and self-care over the coming months, and also I hope you're able to get outside and enjoy the nicer weather wherever you happen to be in the world. Of course, I'm Madison. I'll do an introduction on the next few slides, and this is the tutorial specifically for sections 105 and 106 of Psych 201W. I think it's D100. Yes, that section. Okay, so let's begin. So this video will cover a couple of topics, and it will serve as the first tutorial, pre-recorded of course. It will serve as an introduction to the structure of the course and specifically your labs with me. First, I'll introduce myself properly, and then I'll discuss what tutorials will look like and cover. I'll discuss my role in the course, how to stay in touch with me throughout the semester, and then we'll wrap up with an overview of the course assignments and a quick discussion of what makes research questions important and how to think like a researcher. Okay, so as you all know by now, I'm Madison and I'm your TA for sections 105 and 106 of this course. If you're enrolled in one of those sections, you're in the right place watching this YouTube video on my channel. I'm a first-year master's student in the Clinical Forensic Psychology program at Simon Fraser University, and I received my bachelor's degree in psychology from SFU as well, not too long ago. SFU was a fantastic place to complete an undergraduate degree in psychology with all the research opportunities available and the option to complete directed studies, courses, honors projects, and just get your feet wet research-wise. So if you're ever curious about graduate studies in clinical psychology and different paths to get there, I'm always happy to chat in office hours or over email about this, so feel free to schedule an appointment about that. After I finished my undergraduate degree, I worked for a gap year as a research coordinator at the Forensic Psychiatric Hospital at Colony Farms in Coquitlam. Some of you might know it. And throughout that, I gained more research experience before starting my graduate studies, which was really valuable. My research interests, as you can expect, are mostly forensic in nature, and you'll hear a lot of forensic examples from me, but I'll try and provide examples from other areas of psychology too, so you don't get tired of it. My interests specifically include the improvement of short-term prediction of violent behavior, so we can more accurately evaluate when an individual is at acute risk for violence in the coming hours or days, and also the assessment of threats, which is what my master's thesis focuses on. In the scant time that I'm not working on research, completing coursework, or on practicum, you can find me reading fiction novels, planning my next trip, especially now with all the restrictions. I'm very excited to get traveling again, and considering new decor options for my apartment. So as your TA, I do a number of things in this course, including marking all your submitted work, providing you with feedback on assignments and quizzes if you desire it, helping you develop your research project, recording and posting tutorials, just like I'm doing right now, and holding office hours. Therefore, I am your first point of contact for any questions, issues, or concerns you might have related to this course throughout the summer. In a normal world, tutorials would be weekly small group meetings for about 2 hours with myself and the other students in your section, where we would review course content, go over assignment instructions, and prepare for the various stages of your project, and you'd be able to ask me questions about really anything course related throughout the tutorial. Sadly, we've got to do this remotely, hopefully for the last semester. We'll see, maybe not for undergraduate courses. And I have chosen to conduct my tutorials asynchronously, so in other words, pre-recorded, not live, just to give you all more flexibility in when you watch them. And I also know that some individuals still might be in other places of the country or even overseas, so I don't want you having to wake up really early or stay up really late to attend a live tutorial. So we'll do all the same things in tutorials as I just mentioned and what's on the slide, but we'll do it in a slightly different format. So nearly every week, I will post a tutorial presentation to this YouTube channel, which is unlisted, and I'll pass along the links to all every week. So you can subscribe if you want, you can go check it, but I will send out an email or Canvas message to all your emails every time a video is posted, just so you don't miss it. I will post the videos at 8:30 a.m. sharp each Wednesday. The tutorial is scheduled to take place as this is the time that section 105 would start if the tutorials were taught live. So this means that you can theoretically watch the tutorials at any point over the next 24 hours, which is when your first assignment is due. But it may be in your best interest to watch the tutorial immediately when it's posted, as you will only have 24 hours to complete the weekly assignment that will be introduced at the end of each tutorial. Therefore, if you wait until, say, late Wednesday night to watch the first tutorial, then you'll have much less time to complete the assignment, which will always be due at 9:30 sharp every Thursday morning that we do have an assignment. More on all that later, but the take-home message here is to always watch the tutorials ASAP. It's in your best interest, so you have as much time to work on your assignments when they are due as possible. So going over to office hours now, I'll be holding office hours for a total of 4 hours most weeks, and you are welcome to attend them at any time. It doesn't matter what section you're in, just whenever works for you. They will be always held over Zoom, of course, using the link or the meeting ID and password that you see on this slide. And I believe I will be sending these around so you can actually open it and click on it. Of course, it was also included in the email I sent around to you all already, and it's also included on Canvas whenever you book an appointment, as I'll talk about in another slide. So as I explained in my introductory email, I will have two types, quote unquote, of office hours, both held on Wednesdays during the time originally scheduled for the tutorials to take place. So they will be held then to make sure that everyone can attend, as I know that you all don't have anything else in your schedule then. If I chose another time in the week, it's possible that some people might have coursework then, or other commitments like a job, so I don't want to do that and put some people at a disadvantage potentially. So from 8:30 to 10 a.m. and from 11 to 12:30 a.m. or 12:30 p.m., sorry, office hours will be divided into 15-minute bookable appointments. So what's being described on the left-hand side of the slide there, which you may have already seen in Canvas already because I have set them up. While you can chat with me about anything course related during any type of office hours you attend, the appointments might be best suited for you to get feedback on your quizzes and assignments, to ask questions about course content, and to clarify any issues or concerns you might have about the course. So anything that takes a little longer to discuss, or that it might be helpful for me to know in advance and prepare a little bit to answer your questions. The second type of office hours I will hold will be for an hour from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and that's described on the right-hand side of the slide. It's on the same day though, this is all on Wednesdays. So this singular office hour from 10 to 11 a.m. will be drop-in, no appointment necessary, and you will not be able to pre-book appointments at this time, so it'll always be drop-in. This drop-in hour is geared towards shorter questions, and in particular, any questions you might have about the weekly assignment that you need answered before you get to work on it. So I've specifically scheduled it for 10 to 11, which covers the last half hour of section 105's tutorial and the first half hour of section 106's tutorial. So I know that everyone will be able to attend at least some point throughout that hour. And you will have already had an hour and a half before that to watch the tutorial video. So please, if you have a pressing question about the weekly assignment, please come to the drop-in office hours and don't email me because it'll be much faster. You'll sign on, I'll be there right away, and you can get a response really quickly and then get right to work on your assignment. Both office hours will be using the same Zoom link that you can see on the slide there, just to avoid any confusion and so you don't have to have a ton of Zoom links that resides somewhere on your computer that you have to remember. Yeah, I think that's all for that. So to sign up for office hours, head to the calendar tab in Canvas and make sure that the calendar for 201W is active, and you should see that your calendar becomes populated with a bunch of stuff associated with the course, some of which will be called Madison's office hours. So click on whichever one of those you'd like to book. It'll prompt you to book it, and then I'll be able to see that you've done so. So when you do that, leave me a little note. I believe it gives you a little text box when you book it. So just type in there about what you want to discuss in our meeting so I can prep beforehand and come ready to talk to you about it. So if just explaining the logic behind this booking system, if no one books appointments, then I'll be able to only hold my 1 hour of drop-in office hours instead of 4 hours. And we'll be able to spend the rest of my Wednesday morning being productive in other ways that often will help you, like answering your emails or recording the next tutorial. And then if people do book appointments and let me know what they want to discuss beforehand, I can prepare and come ready to answer your questions a lot better. So now you may be thinking, what about the presentations Dr. Tan was talking about in lecture last week? Totally fair. So for those weeks, there's 2 of them, and specifically for the research proposal presentation, which for all of you will be on June 16th, that Wednesday, and the final research report presentation, which will be on July 21st for you all. We will be meeting during our scheduled tutorial time. So that is Wednesday from 8:30 to 10:30 for section 105, and also on Wednesday, 10:30 to 12:30 for section 106. So please use the same Zoom link as you will for office hours. And again, this is just so you don't have multiple links associated with 201 tutorials floating around, and you just always know if it's to do with the 201 tutorial with me, then you'll use that link. So this does mean that there will be no bookable or drop-in office hours available those 2 weeks specifically. The latter, the drop-in office hours, the absence of those should be fine because those are mainly geared towards answering your very pressing questions about the weekly assignments, and on those 2 presentation weeks, there will be no weekly assignments. But if you do wish to schedule an appointment with me via bookable office hours that week, you're welcome to just shoot me an email, and then we can arrange an alternative time outside of regular course hours that works for both of us. Okay, so this is my email, medge@sfu.ca. It's on the slide there, and you should all have it, and you can feel free to email me at any time via that email address, or you can shoot me a Canvas message. But just note that I usually only respond between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. So if you send me an email on Friday night at 11, and even if you title it as urgent or use all caps in your email subject, I probably won't get back to you until Monday. I am trying to protect my weekends this semester, at least in the summer. So overall, I will do my very best to get back to you in 48 hours at the very most. But of course, this doesn't include the weekend. So again, you might want to leave a bit more time if you want an answer ASAP. So if I don't get back to you right away, please send me a reminder email if it's been 48 hours, because if it's been that long, I promise you're not bothering me or pestering me. Or it just reminds me I owe you an email, but please don't send me an email and then send me an email 2 hours later reminding me about it, because just give me a little time to answer it first. So one thing I will not do, and I think this is pretty standard across most psychology courses in the department, is answer emails about a quiz, a test, or an assignment 24 hours before it's due. So this is to protect both of our sanities. And it's just because emails like that are really stressful, both to send for you guys and to receive for me. And there's often little that can be done in such a short time span. So this rule is just to encourage thinking and planning ahead and making sure that You're not starting studying for each of the tests 24 hours before they happen, or you're not starting your proposal or your final research project 24 hours before they're due, because that is not a good idea. Please don't do that. And it's just a stressful time, so let's not do that. Okay, so a couple tips on this course before we transition into talking about the nitty-gritty bits. So it's a W course, and that means it's writing intensive, which means it's time intensive because writing takes time. That said, it's entirely possible to do well in this course, even if you don't think you're a strong writer. What you'll find is that research writing is quite different from the kinds of writing you'll do in things like English classes, and it involves a slightly different skill set. So if you don't think you're a flowy, amazing prose writer, that's often totally fine for research. This course also moves really quickly. There are weekly assignments due most weeks that you need to keep on top of, and the research proposal is a significant piece of thinking and writing that's coming up in about a month and a half due. That sounds scary, but it's the facts. So it really pays to think ahead and plan ahead in this course and to really stay on top of the material. So I have no doubts that you were all busy with other classes or work and all the other stuff in your life, and believe me, I am too, but it can be super tough to keep up sometimes. But I strongly encourage you all to prioritize setting aside time each week and just staying on top of the readings and the assignments. And then, of course, just getting started very early on what you think you might want to do your research project on, and start maybe creating an outline of that even in the next few weeks. And as well, for the most part, my office hours are totally optional. Technically, you're free to skip them for the entire semester. There's no participation marks for coming, but I don't recommend this. I am here to help, and I'm here as a resource for you. So please ask your questions early, and importantly, just don't struggle in silence, because I don't want that, and I don't want you to go through that either. And I guess I should address this. The kitten that you see on the slide there is, his name's Bast, he's my kitten. He's a little bit bigger than this now. This was taken right when we adopted him. It's one of my favorite photos of him. And just to make things a little bit more interesting and a little fun and cuter, I might be sneaking a picture or two of him into each tutorial. So don't wonder what cats are or why they're relevant to research, because I just wanted to do that. Okay, so now we'll transition and hit the highlights of the graded components of this course. So this is an overview slide of what to do throughout the entire semester for this course. Don't let it scare you. It looks like a lot, and in some ways it is. It's one of the cornerstone classes of the psychology degree at SFU. But you'll find that if you stay on top of things, it won't actually be too much of a burden. I've tried to list the dates in chronological order, so you can save this, you can take a picture of it, or when I send around the slides, you can save it for your records. As Dr. Tan already mentioned, this course will have 2 assessments, which you can think of as a non-cumulative midterm and final if you wish. So you will also have your research proposal paper due the last week of June, and your final research report paper due the first week of August. You will also need to complete 10 weekly assignments that will be due 24 hours after each of the tutorials we have, and each will be worth 2% of your final grade. And I'll talk about them in a lot more detail on next slide. So as a final note here, this is a W course, so you will need to submit something for each of the written components to avoid getting an incomplete for your final grade. So this is just, it's one of these W courses are a little bit different than most of the courses that you'll take for your psychology degree, and you can't leave any of the written components incomplete or else that will show on your transcript. Of course, I highly recommend giving the proposal and the final project your very best effort and actually submitting something that has substance and you're proud of. But at the very least, if you don't want to do that, You need to submit a single page with your name and your student ID on it. It could be blank otherwise, but that is the absolute bare minimum necessary to receive an actual letter grade and to not receive an incomplete in the course. So just something you need to be aware of. Okay, so there will be 10 small lab/tutorial. I might call them one or the other and switch between language, but they're the same thing. These assignments that you will complete during the 10 weeks that we actually have a tutorial. So if you're interested, there are just a couple weeks that we don't, and you should see the course schedule posted by Dr. Tan on Canvas to see that. So each of the assignments is worth 2% of your overall grade for a total of 20% of your overall grade across all of the 10 assignments. 8 of them will be small assignments you will complete immediately after you watch that week's pre-recorded tutorial. So at the end of each tutorial, I'll be giving you instructions about the assignment, and then you can go ahead and start on it, and it's due 24 hours later. These assignments will be fairly easy to obtain high marks on, so my personal advice to you is please try to complete them and complete them on time. They are graded just out of 2, and you will receive a 2 out of 2 if you submit the assignment on time, it's complete, and I can understand what you wrote and why you wrote it and your thought process. You will receive a 1 if you submit something, but it's confusing or it's off topic or you didn't understand the instructions. And then you will only receive a 0 if you don't submit anything. So you automatically get that mark if you submit something. Please submit something. For the 2 tutorials that will be comprised of student presentations, so the research proposal presentation and the final project presentation, you will either get a 2 or a 0, you can't get a 1, and if you just attend and you present, you will get a 2. I'm not marking the quality of your presentation for this mark, so please do that too. Assignment instructions will be given at the end of each tutorial, and you will have 24 hours to complete and submit them, as I've already mentioned. Again, this is why it's important to watch the tutorials ASAP after I post it and get started early. So as tutorials will be posted at 8:30 on Wednesdays, I'll give a sort of bonus hour for watching the tutorial itself, and then assuming that you get started on your assignment right away, or at least as soon as possible, the assignments will be then due at 9:30 on Thursdays, just to allow you to actually watch that tutorial and not take one of your 24 hours out for that. So assignments due 9:30 a.m. Thursday mornings. I still don't have specifics on how you will be submitting them, but I'm guessing it'll be through Canvas just as usual, like you've likely submitted assignments before. However, I will hopefully have more information on that soon for you. So now the research project is probably one of the most important components of this whole course and the one that you can really make your own. This is a 2-piece project, and much of our tutorial time will be spent discussing various aspects of the research process that will help you write and format the proposal and the final project. Also, many of your weekly assignments are designed to stimulate thinking about the project and to actually help you complete little parts of it on time. So they're basically extra marks for something you already need to do. So that's really great. As an overview of the project, just like in actual research, you will be first developing your research question, and then your hypothesis, and then planning your project, at least hypothetically, and I'll talk about that later, and then writing a proposal of what you actually plan to do. Next, you will build on that proposal that you've already written by conducting your study and writing up a research report of your results. This is actually exactly what I have to do for my own master's thesis. I've planned my study, I've written my proposal, and we'll have a formal meeting with my supervisor in the next month to get it tick box formally approved. After, I'll go on to collect my data, spend a really fun month or 2 running statistics to analyze it, and then write it all up into a thesis document. So it's great that you're getting your feet wet really early with a mini version of that for this course. So the first part of your project is the proposal, which is due June 28th at midnight on Canvas. I know this doesn't provide a ton of detail about it right now, but we will have multiple tutorials discussing the real nitty-gritty parts of it before it's due. Briefly, you will choose a research question that's interesting to you and relevant to psychology, and conduct a literature review to see what past research has said about this specific topic. You'll summarize that literature, culminating in why your research question is important, and then you'll write a methods section where you will break down in detail how you will actually conduct your study and what results you think you'll find. So for example, if you're doing a survey of people and asking them to rate themselves on a specific measurement tool of a certain construct, like anxiety or depression, you will discuss how you will administer that survey, what specific measurement tool of anxiety you will be using, and your rationale or why you selected that tool, among other things. But we'll talk about all this in a lot more detail later. And then the second piece of the project is your final research report, which is due at the end of the semester. Specifically on, that's supposed to be August 2nd at, actually, I will update you when it's supposed to be due. Refer to the course outline by Dr. Tam. This is your finished project where you detail what you did and what you found. So this is the methods of your proposal, which will be written in future tense, but your methods and your results that are included in your final report will be written in past tense because you didn't actually do it, but you hypothetically already did the research. So now getting into why I keep saying hypothetically and putting quotations around conducting your research, if we weren't in a pandemic and we're attending tutorials in person each week like usual, you'd actually be collecting this data in our tutorials while using your classmates as willing participants. But unfortunately, we need a remote workaround because this isn't possible. So you'll be developing your question and designing your study just like usual. And then I will actually be generating fake data for each person or each participant of yours. Then you will take this fake data, you will analyze it, and then report your results. So this means that you will be designing a study, but you don't actually have to conduct it. So the sky is really the limit. Keep it simple, of course, just one independent variable and then one dependent or outcome variable. But you can propose something like, say, do incarcerated offenders with higher levels of depression commit less violence while in prison? And then, of course, you don't need to actually go find a sample of offenders to conduct your research in because that would be impossible for the 201 class. Just to let you know about that early so you're not constrained in thinking about what your research question could be. Okay, so finally, I'll briefly talk about presentations. You'll be presenting your proposal on June 16th in your respective tutorial and your final research report on July 21st in the same tutorial section at the same time. I'll be able to provide a lot more information closer to the dates, but generally both presentations will be 3 to 5 minutes long, as Dr. Tan mentioned in lecture last week. And your proposal presentation will cover your research question, your hypothesis, and the methods you will use to answer that question. In your final project presentation, you will give a very brief summary of everything you've covered in your proposal, just to remind your classmates, refresh their memory, and then you will present the required table or figure that showing the data, and what that will also be required to be included in your written report. And then you'll also include the written results of your research informed by the data that I've generated for you and your interpretation of your results, which will resemble the discussion section seen in published journal articles, if you are familiar with that. After you present, feedback will be given to you very briefly by myself, and your classmates will also be invited to give feedback if they wish to do so in a respectful manner, of course. Okay, so just as a quick introduction to thinking about research in psychology and getting you started in generating your research question. Generally, research studies in psychology involve at least one of the following. So collecting observations about behavior in a particular situation and collecting participants' responses to particular problems, tasks, or situations that can be used to make inferences about the mind. As an example of the first, just to make it more tangible to you, this could be something like accessing official police records to measure how many times an individual has committed a criminal offense in the last 5 years. So the individuals that you're trying to assess on the offenses they committed aren't actually responding to anything that you're doing, and in fact, they don't know that you're even doing it. Instead, you're collecting observations about them. Via data or via files in this circumstance, but it can actually be direct observation in a lot of other situations too. Now for the second, collecting participants' responses to particular things, giving all participants who agreed to participate in a study something like a self-report measure of a psychological construct like depression, or a measure of a certain personality trait like openness to experience. So, of course, things like psychological constructs and personality traits are invisible aspects of the mind. We can't touch them, we can't see them. And while we are making progress in neuroscience, we haven't figured out how to measure most things like these directly just yet. So instead, psychological researchers, much before our time, have created tangible measures like these assessment tools that measure constructs indirectly by asking participants to answer questions related to the construct. So those are just examples of potential research methods that psychological researchers can use. Research projects in psychology typically involve collecting observations or responses from participants, which can be measured or quantified. And that's a really important point. So for this reason, in your own research project, you will need to choose variables that can be quantitatively measured. Of course, it would be very difficult for me to generate numerical data for you to analyze otherwise. So we can talk more about that though in future tutorials. Lastly, I want you all to take a couple minutes to consider what makes a research question important versus merely interesting. So there are a lot of things researchers in psychology haven't discovered or looked at yet, and some questions could be interesting. So for example, what color of pen do students prefer to take notes with and why? Does this change depending on what class they are taking notes for maybe? But arguably, there is a pressing need to research many more important questions first before we turn our attention to just the more interesting but not super important ones. So in my opinion, important research questions are ones that further our understanding of a psychological construct like a mental illness, or the relationship between a construct or multiple constructs and one or more outcomes. So just to give an example of all that, the relationship between mental illness and violence hasn't been clarified just yet. Researchers have found that generally more mental illnesses do not equate, or most mental illnesses do not equate to higher risk of violence for most individuals, and often they even decrease risk of violence. But research has also shown that there are specific aspects of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia that may increase the risk, but possibly only when other conditions like active substance use are present. So of course, that's all very complex, and questions around this relationship are clearly important, as their answers may have many implications for how we should treat individuals with psychotic disorders, how individuals who do have these types of disorders and commit violence should interact with the law, and in general, how we can evaluate risk of violence and ultimately make society a safer place, which we want to do. So that brings us to our first weekly assignment and the end of this tutorial. For it, you will need to provide 3 examples from your own life and/or experiences that might be interesting to a researcher in psychology. These will likely be observations about a behavior you've seen someone do, a response to a situation you may have been in, or responses to problems or tasks encountered in daily life. So here are two examples just to get you thinking, but remember, since I've said them, you can't use either of them verbatim. So the first, during the COVID pandemic, some individuals have felt more lonely than others while self-isolating. What personality types are more likely to experience loneliness while self-isolating? And then for a second example, university students use a varying range of study habits, and some people like to study in small portions over a number of days, while others study for hours and just cram it all in the day before the exam. So does studying in small portions over time or for many hours all at once increase knowledge retention more effectively? So you should briefly, in 1 to 2 sentences, highlight why the questions you select are important. And I do mean 1 to 2 sentences because I have to read all these. I don't want them all to be multiple pages in length. So the whole assignment should be able to fit on 1 page or maybe just over. Choose your questions wisely though. One of these is meant to turn into your research project for the whole course. So try and give this activity a little thought. And choose some questions you are genuinely interested in. And then just to be clearer, it's great to think of things you've observed in your own life, but it can also be a question generally related to psychology in some way. So you don't have to have actually observed it. Just wanting to clarify that because I know if I was in this course as a student, I would want to do something relating to forensic psychology, but I haven't witnessed any crimes. So I want to give you all the freedom to think about something relating to psychology that you're interested in that is an important question or a couple important questions for this assignment. Okay. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you have any questions about the first weekly assignment, I'll be on Zoom later today and available to help from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. No appointment necessary because those are the drop-in hours. I look forward to reading your first weekly assignments and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.